Okay, how are you?
Pretty good for a Wednesday. There are people slowly trickling in today. Everybody's waking up late today. All right, let's get those cameras on. Bright and shiny faces.
Professor, I'm
Yeah.
actually using my desktop. I don't have a webcam for it. My laptop, I don't know why I didn't charge last night, but I don't have a webcam for my desktop.
Not a problem. I don't have a webcam on my desktop either. I ordered one like 3 months ago. It's still on back order. All right. So today we're just going to finish up doing a little bit of review, and then I'm going to answer any questions. And then Friday, I'm not going to do a mandatory class. We'll just, I'll be there to answer any questions about group projects, about the final, or anything else that you might have. And any questions this morning? And Dalib, what's going on? What questions do you have?
I don't have any right now.
No? Okay. You and Maribel are always smiling. I don't know why. It's early in the morning. You must be morning people or something.
We're just happy people.
And Jared's barely awake. All right. So no questions? Just give Monica a hard time. She's late. She didn't hear me. because I let her in late. All right. And I'm not going to give Rosa a hard time because she'll probably throw her chancla at me. Yes, Justin, my business is mostly B2B. Because of the pandemic, we've done a little bit of business with individuals who want to buy some equipment. One of my big customers ordered 15 smaller machines for me and had me deliver them to their people's houses. So we've done a little bit of that kind of stuff. Any other questions? Man, people are trickling in really late today. Give it a few more moments. I haven't had my breakfast yet today, so I might be a little grumpy. And then also, Justin, you know, there's B2G, which a lot of people don't know is business to government. We do a lot of government business with the state of California, cities and counties. I've done that for many, many years. Government is one of the biggest and hardest companies to deal with, or organizations, I should say. I can tell you a lot of good ethical stories about the government and doing business, my experiences. But we finished up ethics, didn't we? We already finished that chapter. Okay, I'll tell you one short story while we wait for people to trickle in. Big advertising company in downtown Los Angeles. We used to be one of my accounts, and the purchasing agent was always trying to get the his vendors to give him kickbacks. So he would always propose to me, and I put it off for a long time. And finally, I just got sick of it. And I went to his manager, and his manager told me, "Well, that's the way we do business. That's just too bad the way, you know, if you don't want to do business like that and give my purchasing manager a kickback, that's fine because I get part of that too." I'm going, great. So anyway, I end up losing that customer because I wouldn't give him a kickback. Profit margins on service is about 50%. Profit margins on equipment and supplies is anywhere from 10 to 30%. My industry average isn't all that great. Remember we talked about it was a highly competitive market. That's what our industry is, and it's consolidating, and it's an old market. Other questions? No, wait, let's get started, shall we? Before I bore you guys to death with personal stories. All right, so this is it. Week 10, last class. Woohoo, yay. Everybody happy? All right, so we're going to review for the final exam for the rest of the day. Remember, the final exam is Wednesday, December 16th. Oh, I still haven't fixed this damn thing. There we go. Now that's fixed. Okay, so group projects is due the 18th and not the 8th. IVAL, extra credit, get that into me 2 days because there's going to be no more after today. Class will be here on Friday if I'm not at Starbucks drinking coffee. No, it'll be here in my little room here with my lamp and my big screen behind me. All right. It's actually a monitor. It's not, well, I could use it as a TV too. Okay, so that's it. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy winter break. All right, so in review, we talked about multi-domestic strategy and global strategy. Biggest things are the multi-domestic strategy is products and services customized in each country, and the global product and services standardized worldwide. So you try and use all your resources to go worldwide as opposed to using your resources in each country. So decentralized and centralized is the difference between the two. And then remember we talked about the SWOT and the pastel. It's the pastel is not your book, right? Because I've been teaching this now for 2 years and I'm pretty sure the pastel is not in that book. But that's something that I've added to the textbook because it should be there, but it's not. So part of the SWOT analysis, the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats, and part of the pastel is more of an international type of framework when you are going to evaluate and study different countries and economies to go into. These slides are already uploaded to, I'll double check, but yes, they will be after I'm done, if they're not already. So like the pastel, the political, economical, sociological, technological, legal, and environmental. Those are going to be different for each country when you're doing global and when you're doing for each different country that you're going into. And those tie into the opportunities and threats into the SWOT analysis. Okay. Any questions about this? The pastel, everybody got it? And sometimes it's EL, LEEL. So the pastel, know that, the government, because you might get a question like, if you're going to open up a thumbtack in a different country, would be one of the things you would do? Ooh, that'd be a good question, wouldn't it? All right, then we talked about our buddy Gertz. How if you are going to go into another country using his 6D model to know what kind of workforce you're going to have to deal with, what kind of ethics and what kind of other types of things that each individual country has, that it might be different, might be the same. For example, we talked about pragmatism in Turkey. Describes how every site has to maintain some links with its own past while dealing with the challenges of the present and the future. We talked about how India, this is a really big thing in India right now, how a lot of the younger generation wants to be their own boss, start their own businesses, especially in the tech industry. There's a couple of really good articles on that if you guys want to read some extra stuff about what's going on in India. And then also we talked about the 6 ones. We only talked about 2. Indulgence, the extent to which people try to control their desires and impulses based on the way they were raised. So a lot of this has to do with the culture and a lot of the ways that they deal with the new technology and how their culture deals with it. Okay, so when you're going into a new country, a third world country, a foreign country, it's very important that you know how you're going to be received if you're going to open up a company that way. If you open up a type of company that they don't like or they don't perceive as useful to their culture, they're not going to be very they're not going to have open arms in welcoming you. Degree of differences. Okay, this is from your book example, administrative distance. Degree of differences between the legal and regulatory frameworks of 2 nations. And the economic difference, remember we went through the 4 different types. Little review of strategy and global strategy. Global strategy is a goal and set of policies to achieve advantage by leveraging resources, assets, knowledge, gross geographic markets. For example, we talked about how Disneyland went to Japan, how they the strategy that they used and the partnerships that they used. Okay, so and some of the difference between countries, the increased complexity effect of the success of international strategies includes customer taste and needs of income levels. For example, we talked about Coca-Cola, how they went into South Africa. The tastes were kind of different. Obviously, the income levels were very different than the United States. You don't go to the grocery store and pay $3 for a Diet Coke. You're not going to go to Europe. When I was in Europe, I drank Diet Coke. When I was over there, it cost me €6 a bottle. So that was kind of expensive. It was just cheaper to get a wine or a beer, which was $1 or €1. Government regulations can be different in each country. Legal systems, public tolerance for foreign firms. Many times there's countries that just don't want any foreigners in their country. So if you're going to go in there, you're going to have to probably do a partnership with a firm that's already there. And reliability and basic infrastructure. Remember, we talked about how India's infrastructure wasn't conducive to the way that Walmart does business, how they do the spoke and hub type distribution center. Okay, so competing internationally, competitive advantage, configuration, coordination, the 3 C's. And then we talked about international strategies, responsive versus standardization, how we talked about India and the Big Mac. I know a few of you contributed to that. That was quite interesting. How many of the McDonald's cater to individual countries as opposed and also globally on a global basis. And then we talked about arbitrage strategy, taking advantage of country comparative advantages and sources and low costs, and the economics of the Big Mac Economics Index, and cultural arbitrage and administrative arbitrage, how a lot of the American companies capitalize on Ireland's low tax rate to set up a corporate or a corporate office in Europe. So instead of bringing all the money back to the United States and getting taxed 35% on it, they would only get taxed 12.5% and keep the money in Europe. Apple, Nike, all of these big, huge corporations have money, billions of dollars sitting offshore doing absolutely nothing because they don't want to bring it to the United States and get taxed. So just by bringing it, not only do they pay tax in the countries where they earn the income, but they also get taxed when they bring the money into the United States. So instead of paying taxes to the US government, they just let the money sit offshore and use it as they need it, or use it to borrow against, which is very common. So they'll go to the bank here in the United States, says, hey, we want to borrow $10 million. And they said, okay, your interest rate is 3%, as opposed to paying 21%. That's quite a big difference, isn't it? So they'll pay interest of 3% instead of paying a 21% interest or 21% to the IRS. And they'll borrow money, pay the 3%, use the money for whatever they want. And as collateral, they'll use their offshore money. So the banks have no problem with that. All right, so what is innovation? The conversation of novel concepts and innovation into a product, process, or business model that generates revenues and profits. So innovative strategy, radical innovation. We used Uber as an example of radical innovation where they pretty much decimated the taxi cab industry. Okay, this is kind of a visual of what innovation looks like, usefulness, novel, implemented. Remember, we talked about understanding business models. So the value proposition is a firm seeks to solve customer problems, satisfies needs with a particular unique value of a value proposition. Customer segments, the value propositions are designed to meet the needs of one or several different customer segments. Channels are the value propositions are delivered to the customer segments through communication, distribution, or sales channels. So those are the different ways that you get the products or the service to the customers. Customer relationships are established and maintained with each customer segment. So how you do that depends on the type of business that you have. Sometimes you can do it on the internet. Sometimes you have to have a physical location where you have to have some place where the customer can go, or sometimes you go to the customer. The Maytag repairman, for example, or woman, goes on site to the customer for customer relationships, for fixing equipment. Revenue streams result from value propositions that are successfully offered to customers through pricing strategies. And there's a whole class you can do on pricing strategies. All right, and then also key resources are the assets required to offer and deliver the company's value proposition. So a key asset would be a building, or key resources or key asset buildings, equipment if you need to manufacture things. So those types of things are key resources and assets. Key activities and capabilities, value propositions are developed and delivered through key activities and capabilities. So how you do things is your key activity, and the way you do them and how you do them are your capabilities. Key partnerships. We talked about Toyota, how they have key partnerships with many of their manufacturers that make parts for their cars, anything from 5% partnership to 50% ownership of the companies. And then the cost structure is the business model elements above results in the cost structure for delivering the value proposition of the customer. The cost must be covered by the revenue streams in order for the firm to be profitable. So the way you charge the customer, you got to make sure that you actually can make a profit and make a profit in the long run. Any questions about that exciting stuff? No? Probably a pretty good thing to remember for the final. Okay. And then we talked about value chain. For example, we used Amazon as an example of the value chain, how the authors sold their work or had their work done with the publishers. Publishers would make the books, send it to the warehouse or the distribution, and the distribution would go to the stores, and the customers would either go to the stores or order online from the warehouse. Amazon cut out the distributor and cut out the store, and then the authors decided to cut out everybody and take 100% of their profit because they can publish their own works and sell them on the internet directly to the customers. So that's kind of the way things have developed. The dynamics of competitive strategy, we talked about a little bit about that. The definition of a strategic group, a set of companies that compete in similar ways with similar business models, pursuing similar sets of customers. We use the airline industry for that, and how Delta and Southwest don't compete directly with each other. And we use the barrier to mobility. We talked about how Southwest and the low fare group is the big ones, and full fare group, they're kind of about the same size. The strategy canvas, we talked about a little bit about Southwest when we did that, but more importantly, we have the strategy canvas for Thumbtack. I would commit that to memory, but that's just me. A competitor response profile is a profile of competitors that identifies its objectives and assumption, its strategy, and its resources and capabilities in order to anticipate how the competitor might respond to actions. So you want to know if you're a competitor with Thumbtack, what would drive you to compete with Thumbtack? What does Thumbtack do that is good? What does Thumbtack do that is bad? How are you going to compete with that? Are you even able to compete with that? Do you have the resources? Do you have oh man, way too far. Do you have all of the key resources? Do you have the revenue stream? Do you have the customer relationships? All of these different things. Do you have all these things that you can have in place to deal with what Thumbtack is doing? Okay, and then what is the competitor capable of doing? So not only are what they're currently doing, but you got to see what they're going to do in the future. For example, we use Southwest. If they were to start doing international flights to Europe, which they don't do, but Delta does. So how is Delta going to deal with that when Southwest decides to do that, or if they ever do that? Okay. So you want to know how to beat the competitions of 4 principles for identifying potential competitive moves. So know your own strengths and weaknesses. We already knew that. Bring strengths against weaknesses. So if Thumbtack was very, say for example, they were very weak on dealing with contractors, you would probably want to emphasize how you would cater to those contractors, builders, and say, hey, this is what we can do for you guys. And they're going to, hey, this is 10 times better than Thumbtack. Let's go with these guys instead. Okay, protect and neutralize vulnerabilities. So being new to the industry, that'll probably be a vulnerability, but you're going to say, hey, we have the infrastructure, we have the capital, we have all this great stuff. We will be able to compete with them. Develop strategy that cannot be easily imitated or copied. Go where the competitor is not. We talked a little bit about what blue ocean is and how that relates to that type of strategy. How it can't be easily imitated. For example, a lot of technology, a lot of things that Toyota does, all the KIPs that Toyota's put together, can't be, you can imitate or you can do one or two, but you can't do all 12, 20 of them that they have that they're very, very good at. Then we talked a little bit about game theory. Basically, what I want you to know about game theory is how you would react to a customer's move. So if a customer does one thing, you're going to do another thing, or the same thing, or the move, a different move. So learn about that and what the Nash equilibrium is, a set of moves in which a game that simultaneously maximize each firm's payoff. So you're going to do, if they move one, you're going to do the same move. If they discount, if Pepsi discounts their 2-liter bottle to 99 cents, Coke's going to discount their 2-liter bottle 99 cents the next week. So though that's kind of an example of a Nash equilibrium where you do the same type of move. Then we have dominant strategy and tit for tat strategy. So then we also talked about strategy responses in different types of situations, like in a monopoly. So monopoly, basically the utilities now are monopolies. Nobody else is allowed to be a monopoly because of the way the government sets up all the different laws. You may be have somewhat of a monopoly if you have a patent on a certain product for a while, but that only lasts for a certain amount of time. And we talked about oligopoly, where only a few firms are in there, and then the strategy for that. And then perfect competition, for example, my industry is considered perfect competition because it has a high competitive value to it. So, and most everybody pursues a low-cost strategy, and there's many mergers and consolidations in the industry. Then we also talked about the 7S model by McKinsey. So alignment, a condition where organization elements fit together and reinforce each other. So we had the hard, and the 7S as a balloon, and then they had the hard C, or the hard triangle, and the soft square that we talked about. So when you adjust one, they all move around like a balloon. We squeeze on one side, it gets bigger on the other side. You squeeze on one side, it gets bigger on the other side. So you have to be very careful about the way you adjust it and the different things that you do. The hard triangle, the 3 elements of strategy, structures, and systems in the 7S model. The hard triangle represents a set of hard levers that managers can quickly pull to create alignment or realignment. And then the soft square, the elements of style, staffing, skills, and shared values. Soft squares elements are often difficult to arrange and usually take a long time to influence and change. Okay, then the hard 3, the strategy, structure, and system. Staffing, skills, style, and shared values are the soft 4. All right, so the positive, full service, tight cost controls, customer service, informal, conservative, high good people, promote within, decentralization. The negatives, no focus on niches, management by exception. So those are the 2 examples of the negatives and positives. And strategic change. Remember we talked, almost had a whole chapter on change. Motivating, moving, and maintaining, unfreezing change. Change itself, then refreezing the change to what you want it to be. So it's not exactly the easiest thing to do, and change is the process is very, very difficult. I didn't include that slide. I thought I included this 8 changes of slides, but you can review that. I posted it. So when you're trying to change in a large corporation, you want to state the change, whether the change is minor or major. You want to get the leaders on board to get them to support you on this. And change must be led from the top, and senior leaders must um, be supportive. Always listen to feedback. It's always important that you know what's going on. There's going to be some negative feedback. There'll be a lot of positive feedback depending on what the change is and depending on how you're doing. Acknowledge feedback. Always make sure you acknowledge all of the ideas in the process. That doesn't mean you have to acknowledge each and every individual in a huge group of 500 or something, but put the group, put the different ideas together that people have that are very, very similar, and definitely acknowledge them. Okay. Use emotional intelligence. Leaders must lead by example. Change can be scary for the team, and showing compassion and empathy are important. Leaders must communicate clearly, show discipline, and be transparent. So always communicate, and that I cannot stress that enough, that communication is very, very important when it comes to change. Explain the whys, the whens, the hows, and what and why you're doing it and how you're going to do it. Always very, very important. Define clear roles. Make sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing and the roles of change. If you have somebody out there who is feeling left behind or doesn't feel like they're contributing, it's going to create some animosity, and they're not going to be very susceptible to your change. And always provide training, especially in technology. When you're upgrading systems or when you're doing new ways of doing things, the training is very, very important. People don't want to know, or people want to know how to do things and what they're doing, and they don't want to fail at it, and they don't want to feel like they're being left behind. You don't just say, okay, yeah, just ask so-and-so, they'll tell you how to do it. Reward acceptance. Some teamers will take well to change and proactively aid in accepting it, while others will be slow to adapt. Have a plan in place to publicly reward those that make time and effort to embrace change. It can be as little as, hey, great job. Jeff did this and that, and Jeff's fully integrated with the process. And everybody goes, oh, great, Jeff. Everybody likes Jeff. All right. So the change process: generate urgency, build coalition, create vision. Okay, share the vision, empower action, short-term wins, and consolidate gains, institutionalize changes, and make them complete. And that is the change process. Here's the slide I was talking about. The 8 steps to successful change: create urgency, form a powerful coalition, create vision, change, and so on. This is actually a really good review for change. And if you ever have to implement any type of change in any organization that you work for, this would be a perfect example to as an outline to go by. Okay, balanced scorecard. We talked a little bit about that. Not important, not going to be on your test. Okay, purpose of the corporation, just for your review. Stockholders versus employees. Owners runs the business. In a proprietorship, partnerships, 2 or many. Corporate governance, the process and structure that provide the ultimate decision-making authority for the firm. Where does the firm want to end up in the company? Okay, remember we talked about Burrell and Dodd. The professors had 2 different ideas of what a corporation should do. Is a corporation good or evil? We had a good discussion on that. And corporations can buy assets just like an individual can buy a boat, a car, an RV, houses, plants, equipment, all kinds of things. Okay, property rights versus nexus of contracts. And the stakeholder model, we talked about how not just the stockholders or stakeholders or the employees, but the whole community itself. And we talked about external stakeholders and internal stakeholders. Corporates could not exist without a charter from the state, and therefore the corporation's first duty was to provide for the good of the community. And remember, we talked about never trust a company incorporated in Nevada, Florida, or Maryland, because they are not responsible for their actions. The corporation is, not the individual. Okay. So we talked about basically if you pollute the, if you're in a corporate and you're polluting, you're self-governing. There are a few government agencies that regulate this type of thing, but in general, corporations are self-governing by the people who run them. Hence why Wells Fargo has so many ethical and legal issues. Of course, so they make billions of dollars and it's just not that big of a deal. So an agent versus a principal. An agent is a person who works for, is a manager, and the principal is the owner of a company or a stockholder. Okay, so remember we talked about agents, tender offer, proxy fight, the agency problem, modern corporations with an example for Wells Fargo, how the agents are giving these different incentives to meet by the principals, and they do unethical things to meet these conditions. Okay, so we talked about what a board of directors is, a group of individuals who monitor the executive team, and what a fiducial duty is of the agents and the stockholders, inside directors, outside directors. And we talked about pay for performance, which caused the a lot of the ethical problems and the bonuses, the way they were set up in Wells Fargo Corporation. So stock-based compensation, stock options, stock grants, those are usually given to employees. And the ethical behavior about Wells Fargo, which all boils down to what is a cultural type of behavior and pattern, what has been done over the norms. For example, teaching you guys ethics. I have no reason to believe that I'm going to be able to change your ethics by my views or teaching you about ethics. What your ethics are already embedded in you. All I can do is tell you, hey, if you do this, you're going to get fined $1 million. So, and I can tell you, in business, acting ethically is always good for the long run. You're always going to, something won't turn around and bite you in the ass, put it to you that way. Like, for example, I know something would have happened basically if I was to start giving that guy money for buying product from me. Eventually he would want more and more money. Eventually I'd get pissed off and it would create animosity. So always think in the long run, what's going to happen? Are you going to want to keep that customer? I've only gotten rid of a few customers over the years, and both of them were law firms. Business model canvas, we talked about that with Thumbtack. Pastel, know what you're doing with that. And what is the most important thing to remember from this class? This is time for you guys to weigh in. Go ahead. Take a wild guess. Jared, what's the most important thing to remember from this class? Throw some things out there, Jared.
Don't get arrested.
That's always a good thing. I was going to put that in my syllabus, but you know, they probably frown upon that. Rosa, what do you think?
I don't know, to have a good business strategy if you plan to open up a business.
What's the most important thing in a relationship?
Trust.
Trust, that's always good.
Make sure she's happy.
What is your significant other always telling you that you don't do enough of?
Communicate.
Very good. Communication. So just like a personal relationship, the most important thing in business is communication. So if everybody knew what everybody else was doing, it would be so much easier, wouldn't it? All right. That pretty much wraps it up. So what questions do you have for me? Anything? Yes, I'm going to upload those slides to iLearn after we're done. How Pastel applies to Thumbtack. Well, if Thumbtack wasn't just in the United States, Pastel would apply to how you would enter into another country like Mexico, South America, Central America, Europe, Africa. So you would take all those things into consideration. Remember how we talked about when the electric company went into France and they said, "Oh yeah, we promise you, we're not going to fire you. We promise you guaranteed employment, blah blah blah, and we promise you these great wages and all this other stuff." And the French said, the employees of France said, "Yeah, we don't give a shit. We already get that stuff by law. The government says you have to. Once you hire us, you can't fire us. So." That's a really big deal. Once you get hired, you can't get fired. It's almost like a government job here. So, and then yes, we're guaranteed a certain amount of money, and we're guaranteed a certain retirement. Like one of the biggest things that Greece, because of the financial thing, they're guaranteed their full retirement at age 50. That'd be great. Retire at 50 and not do anything. You're still young. You're still able to do many things and contribute, but yet you're in retirement doing nothing. And the government's paying for it. And the people your age are paying for it because you have to pay your Social Security taxes when you go to work. So, questions, concerns?